guys, thanks for joining me. How you doing there, Flight Junkies? Hey, I wanted to make another video here. I get requests for all sorts of different types of videos, and some of the stuff that I teach in training, I haven't made a video about it yet. And I do, if you watch some of my forward launch techniques and reverse launch techniques, usually our videos try to teach you something. Some of our videos are just kind of playing around, acting like idiots, but most of my videos try to teach you something, especially about safety. And some of them are about how to have more success at some of the ways that you're learning to launch. One of the things that I see, and I titled this video, To Look or Not to Look. And the reason I've titled it that is because I see a lot of bad habits out there in the powered paragliding industry, even being taught by other instructors. Now, some of these instructors may not even know themselves. It doesn't take anything for some guy to call himself an instructor, so be very careful with that. And by the way, there is no such thing as a certified instructor. That piece of paper means nothing. All they have to do is join an organization and show they know how to fly and pay some money, and they're awarded a certified instructor status, even though they've trained nobody. We're currently at 1,127 students. We have a flawless safety record, and I've always offered unlimited free training, so you're not paying for the training. You're not locked into a 10-day program, 2-day program. You can have as much as you want until I'm dead. I'll even train your family members if you bought that equipment from me. So one thing I want to do is keep the sport safe. I don't put a barrier of a price tag, and I also train in all 50 states, so you have no excuse not to get good training. And some of the stuff that I teach is what I'm going to show you right now. And one of the things that I've seen in videos is these guys teaching you not to look at the glider when you're launching with the motor on your back. To me, that is the dumbest shit I've ever seen in a long time when it comes to launching. Second only to the one where they run back, which I just made a video about, where they run back into the wing doing their forward launches and they get a running start and hit the wing. Some of these techniques are just absolutely amateur and obsolete, but again, sometimes they just don't know because their instructor learned from another instructor who learned from another instructor who didn't know, and the stupidity just progressively went right down the line. I'm going to show you some of the stuff that they're not teaching you, and I'm going to show you, and if you reason this out, you'll understand what I'm talking about. The first thing I teach my students to do is to look at the wing. Now, other instructors have even come to me, and I get along with some of them. I'm friends, and I trained a lot of guys to become instructors. But if any guy's teaching you not to look at the wing, he's robbing you, and I'll show you why. When you look at the wing, you can see what the wing is doing. That's a pretty simple statement, isn't it? When you're not looking at the wing, you don't know exactly what it's doing. For a newbie, no matter how much time you spend training to kite and to walk without looking at the wing, it's still, when it comes time for launching and you have that motor on your back, even just 2 foot off center, which you will not be able to feel as a newbie, is going to pull you as you throttle up. Now, this doesn't affect you when you have just the training harness on. So some of these guys, and I've seen in their video, they take them down to the beach. By the way, that's the #1 place and the #1 videos that I've seen these guys teaching to go by feel. Don't look at the wing. Learn these skills of not looking at your wing. Well, anybody could do that at a beach because the wing automatically stays centered. But guess what? Not everybody's launching at a beach. You're launching on flat ground. You're in anywhere but the coastline. It's not as easy. And as a newbie, when you're on information overload, you're nervous because of your first flights, you've got a motor on your back, you've got the extra weight, you don't have a training harness on your back. When you're actually launching, you're not going to notice by a little bit of feel that it's off-centered. As you get progressively better and practicing it, yes, you can go by feel, but I'm going to show you some other reasons why it's still good, even after you become experienced, to look at your glider. I'm going to show you that in a minute. So, when you're launching, you have to remember that this thing has to take off dead nut into the wind. Any diversion from you not staying in a straight line into that wind means the wing is going to curve off, sometimes at the last second, and when it does that, it pulls you off balance. And you'll see guys swinging out, hitting the ground, they'll come rolling in, or they'll start kiting their wing, and they're not looking at it, and as they're moving forward, as soon as they start to throttle up, if that wing's even 2 foot off to the side, and they couldn't feel it because of their inexperience, immediately, as they start to throttle, it creates lift. Problem is, it's not lifting straight up, it's lifting off to that 2 foot off center. Well, what does that do? Well, when you're running, you actually only have 1 foot on the ground at a time. It is so easy with every step that you take to be pulled off center instead of staying straight into that wind, which keeps the wing level. So these guys that are not looking at the wing, they can keep it straight for a while, but as they start to throttle up, it pulls them off center, and now at the last second, it pulls them either off balance and they trip and fall and they're buying propellers, or they have a completely wild launch where the wing drops off the last second, they're thrust into the air and they're swinging under the wing like crazy, and if they overreact because they're kind of scared, the worst thing you can do at that point is let off the throttle and then swing down and hit the ground, which I've seen videos of them doing that. But if you're looking at your wing, we teach our students not to throttle up until they see a wing. So when they're launching forward or launching reverse, if they look at their wing, it will automatically, they'll know by looking at the wing that it's off-centered, and they won't throttle up until then. This stops them from face planting and a whole list of other things. I want you to think about this for a second. I'm going to use this broom as an example. When you're standing there with the motor on your back, let's say for a second you're going to do a forward launch. I want to use this broom. So when you're standing there with your motor running, you have thrust coming off the back of this motor. There it is, your thrust. When you are not looking at your wing and you're going to launch this thing, you're going to do what you've normally done your whole life since you started to walk. The minute you go for a run, what's the first thing you do? You lean forward and you start to run. What that does is it takes that thrust that's on your back, and look at this. Watch this. There's my thrust line. Watch what happens. Just with a little bit of bend, look where my thrust is at. If I have a motor that's putting out 100 plus pounds of thrust, I no longer weigh the same amount. I'm actually heavier now. And what that's going to do is that pushes my thrust way up there, and it's pointing me down there. Not only do I run a risk of face planting if my wing collapses, because I'm not looking at it. If it goes past 12 o'clock, it collapses. Now I have all this thrust face planting me. And of course, people like in the risk and reward video that I wouldn't waste a dime on, their solution for this is to put a full face helmet on and just keep banging your face into the ground. The secret to eliminating that whole problem, not only can you not see the wing with a full face helmet on, but if you look up at your wing, you will never face plant because you won't throttle up unless you have a good wing. When I'm looking at my wing, I'll show you exactly where my thrust is at. Look at it now. Look at my thrust. Where is it at? Is it making me lighter or heavier? How about their way, where I lean slightly forward? What's going to happen if I'm doing this? I run a risk. First of all, I can't see my wing, so I run a risk of not knowing whether it's good, and when I throttle up, I can be pulled off balance while I'm running. The second thing is, let's suppose I do run a straight line and I don't get pulled off, and let's suppose that the wing is perfect. Leaning forward is still going to keep me on the ground longer. Staying on the ground longer gives me longer, it gives me more, it's keeping me on the ground longer. I have to run further. It gives me more chances to trip. It also gives me more chances to go and run not into the wind, like sort of start curving off. And at any time that I curve off and don't stay straight into the wind, my wing starts to drop off. So even if I'm leaning forward and I don't have a face plant, I'm still adding more chance to trip and fall, be pulled off center because of my running and the torque of the motor, and then also swinging in the air. But there's also another thing that it could do. When you're leaning forward like this, and your prop is pushing you on the ground, your lines, your body is at this angle, okay? See, my body is at this angle, but the wing is slightly behind you at that angle. Well, what's the problem with that, you ask? Well, you've got your two carabiners right about here. They're going back to the wing, okay? And your body's going this way. When it does finally, even if you manage to hold it in a straight line, and even though you've run further now, and even though you had to run faster to get off the ground to lift that extra weight from the thrust holding you to the ground, when it does finally lift you off the ground, and you can watch this in videos, with experienced pilots and non-experienced pilots. When it finally lifts you off the ground, it's going to sweep your body and your feet out in front of you. And what happens at that very moment, I want you to imagine standing on a bathroom scale. And we had one in our house growing up. My mother had one with a dial on it, not the digital kind, but a dial, and it went up to 400 pounds. And you could stand on that scale and just flex your knees a little bit. And that thing would jump 100 pounds, 200 pounds, just from the flexing of your knees against gravity. When these guys are launching like this, with that thrust keeping them on the ground, and with their lines slightly behind them, with their body position and this from running forward trying to pull the motor rather than let the motor push them, they sweep out at the last minute. They're now thrusting all of this leg meat, and their torso is adding extra weight. Well, the problem is the bottom of your cage is only about this far off the ground. And you just made yourself, not only were you heavier while you were running, but when it's thrusted you off the ground, you became even more heavy. You were about another 100 to 200 pounds heavier. That bottom of the cage comes down, slaps the ground, and you either break the prop or bend your cage up or both. But either way, you're shelling out a lot of money. So you have a bad. Now occasionally in high winds, you'll see somebody escape that. They'll come down, it'll almost hit, and maybe they'll even mow the grass for about 20 feet, and then they lift out. If you see a pilot dipping as he takes off, he had a bad launch. Even though he didn't hurt anything, even though he didn't break his prop, his technique is terrible because he's leaning forward and he's being swept out. When it finally gets to the end where it lifts him, he's leaning forward, the wing's back there, it sweeps him out. So he becomes instantaneously big. But in most cases, and especially with newbies, if you're just learning, you're setting yourself up for a lot of failure, and you're setting yourself up for a lot of hardship. And get that credit card out, because you're going to be buying cage parts, you're going to be buying propellers, and you're going to be buying all sorts of stuff to fix your motor that you just broke because you swept your feet out and slammed it to the ground just for a second while you made yourself heavy like that. So look up at the wing. If you have a good wing, you'll know it, and you won't take a bad wing. If it's off to one side, if your skill level's low, don't try to run and fix it on the run. Disconnect, set up for another launch. It's worth the 20 minutes. If something's way off, don't stay on the throttle and try to fix it. You won't have the balance in the beginning to be able to do that. So if you don't see a good wing, shut the motor off. But if you have a good wing and you're looking at it, keep running and start rolling on the throttle. You can look down. It doesn't mean you can't look down, but predominantly I want your eyes looking up at that wing and staring at the wing, because if it is bad, you can just kill it. If it is good, you'll go on, you'll have a perfect wing, you'll know, and it's going to lift you straight up. When you're looking up at the wing, your body is in line with the carabiners and the line. So you're lifted off the ground. You're not swung out and become instantaneously heavy. So try applying this to your technique. Look at your wing. Know what it's doing. You will not have the experience in the beginning to know, and even when you do finally get to the point where, yes, you can go by feel, you're still going to want to look at it because it still puts your body in that correct position of putting the thrust down there and putting you up there. You'll have quicker takeoffs, more efficient takeoffs, and at any point, even for the professionals, every now and then the wing just doesn't do what you want it to do. You can abort it anytime because you'll know that it's going bad. Long before you would feel it in your toggles, you'll know that it's going bad. I hope this has been a help. If you have any other videos that you'd want to see, let me know about it. Make sure you subscribe to our channel. Hit the subscribe button below. I make videos every week, and usually my stuff is stuff that'll show you how to improve your launches or teach you something to keep you safe or even keep you alive. This is not an excuse for training. Don't use my videos to train yourself. You'd be a dumbass to do that. Just let me train you. I train free of charge. You have no excuse not to get good training. I'll work with you as long as it takes. We have unlimited free training. So when these other guys are charging you $2,500 to $3,500, don't let that drive you to start watching videos to train yourself. Let me train you. And come on in. I hope this has been a help. Thanks for joining me. I'm Captain Kurt.